Stop, hold it, wait a minute, let me put some air traffic control in it. Hold your horses, hold on tight to your dreams. Anyone? Bueller, anyone? That's a great song, by the way, by the Electric Light Orchestra. Hold on tight to your ATC dreams. And if you look at that view, it encompasses what we aim to do today. Hold on tight. We're going back to holding, and it's a review and look into holding situations here at San Juan CRAP. In particular, we are looking into the Sector 4, into the Sector 2 environment when Princess Juliana, Tango November Charlie Mike, St. Martin as you know it, has to hold. Really exciting presentation today. It's a good way to kind of segue from what we learned in Hold the Line, the presentation that we did before on holding, and go into this new concept. Same rules, same procedures more or less, just a different geographical location inside our airspace. Steve here, looking forward to it. Couldn't be any more pumped to spend some time with you today, talk some shop, look at some wonderful sectors, look at the beautiful view, and let's get down to it. I will see you at the next slide for that bulleted list. Sticking with the themes of famous songs that have the word hold in them, I Want to Hold Your Hand, the Beatles, the Fab Four, George, the Quiet Beatle, and Ringo, who we have left, and Paul, who we have left, and John, and George, like I said, left us way too soon. So, like I said, we're building on what we learned in Hold the Line. I will link that in the description just in case if you haven't gone over Hold the Line. And if you did watch Hold the Line, I appreciate it. It kind of was our introductory concept into holding. It was that tip of the iceberg. We took that pick and we made our initial scrape and we got some stuff out of the way. Phraseology went into some of the detailed things that holding has in store for us in chapter 4. So a slight review. We'll touch chapter 4 again, some of the phraseology. So don't worry, we'll give you a little crash course. If anything, it should be a lot easier because we have a charted holding pattern, which we'll discuss in a minute. We will explore a scenario in detail, which is wonderful. We're looking at when Princess Juliana has to close the door on us and they have to no longer accept aircraft, and we have to find a place to put these aircraft. It will happen more often than not, and you'll be happy that you are mentally prepared and having this tool in your back pocket for when that time comes. Learn some more procedures and techniques, like always, getting back to some of the basics here. No longer broad concepts where we kind of leave it open-ended. There is some structure to this presentation. So off to the sector, ready, set, jets go. Something's waiting for us, and let us rise to the occasion and get ready to hold on. So I will see you at the sector. Well, looky here. We find ourselves back inside the friendly confines of Sector 4. As you see, we are in a zoomed up, kind of concentrated area, focusing on that eastern half of the sector. In a typical R4, R6, or maybe you're working R4 by itself, you would naturally see everything. Also, too, you see how the settings are set up where we are able to view a little bit of Sector 2. We are actually looking at a lot of Sector 2, and probably the most important hallmark cornerstone of Sector 2, which will impact us the most as an R4 controller, is we are looking at Princess Juliana, that weird diamond-like polygon airspace that we delegate to them every morning, and from the surface up to flight level 150. We will find ourselves sequencing a lot for this fix as an R4 controller. Actually, with the way preferential routes work and just the nature of traffic flows, R4 will probably set that sequence and R2 will either maintain it, kind of fine tune it, polish it a little bit, and just babysit it. So you will be doing this. This will be your masterpiece. So as you see, we have a little bit of a UTC time clock to give you some sense of relevance, and we have 3 aircraft inbound in Princess Juliana, and they are actually landing St. Martin. What is not depicted is the Juliana arrival zone, which we know is a dashed squared line, which you will see in the next slide, where R2 has control for descent, and descent only into any airport that lies within Princess Juliana's approach control, St. Eustatius, St. Barth, Grand Case, CJ Lloyd, and Princess Juliana proper. 3 aircraft. We will get to strips here just in a second, but these aircraft are all landing Princess Juliana. Now that we have our bearings, as if we just took a relief we just relieve somebody, and we are here plugged in, ready to go, and we are starting to formulate our plan, possible sequence with American and JetBlue and Windy City 334 checking in. We get this kind of distressing intraline phone call from D2. Low ceilings at Juliana, hold all inbounds, update in a half hour. Now, this is a real situation. They have limited approaches, instrument approaches into Juliana, so when visibility gets bad, no ILS there, you have to think and react in a hurry because they just shut the door. The nature of air traffic control is fluid and dynamic. It's always nice because we talk to an aircraft and we know in a specified amount of time or mileage, in a couple hundred miles, they're out of our hair. In about 15 minutes, this aircraft's going to be off frequency, somebody else's problem. Well, when holding has to happen, that goes out the window, and we are now becoming a sponge of a sector and absorbing all of those aircraft where normally it'd be a mechanical motion. Planes are en route, they land, they depart, en route, leave, that's all stopped. And it's up to us as the center controller to absorb that and find a place to put these aircraft where they will be safe and sound. And for when whatever reason is causing the hold, whatever impetus behind the holding, which in this case is inclement weather, they're in a position to be cleared back to where they want to go with minimal disruption. So with all of that kind of being understood and all of that weighing on our mind as we sit down and we think to ourselves critically what we are going to do to these aircraft, there's a couple techniques that I would like to introduce both to the D4 controller and to the R4 controller, because this is a team effort and we will get through this together as a team, as a family, as one cohesive, wonderful unit firing on all cylinders. Suggestion one technique: segregate all Princess Juliana bound traffic into a special posting area. This is a throwback to the Academy. If you remember, we had the SPA, the SPA, and whenever there was holding at any of the airports in Era Center, we were responsible to put them in the SPA. We had to give them a SPA day and put them somewhere special because that is special. It's a special event. Now, the San Juan Center SOP does not stipulate this particular caveat. This is a technique. You do not have to do it. There's nothing mandating you to do so, but more often than not, it is used to get that traffic segregated because we know there's a whole bunch of record keeping, phraseology, strip marking that is entailed when we hold aircraft. So there you go, a crappy TNCM hold because we were in a rush and we just jotted it down like a 5-year-old learning how to write for the first time in all caps. And there are all of our aircraft. I'm kind of covering up American 2312, but you get the gist. We have, there they all are. We put them in a semi-time sequence, even though that may not be the sequence that Slugo. We are not privy to the information that D2 has. More on that in a subsequent slide when we go over what the order should be. But D2 has that information, and we will get that from them because this is a team effort, like I said. So there we go. Technique one. Find everybody who is going to Princess Juliana or to whatever airport is affected. Maybe it says Juliana is affected. They were going to Grand Cay, St. Eustatius, St. Barth, CJ Lloyd, and Gia. You can leave them because they might be able to make it into those airports. But this time, everybody's landing Juliana. Juliana is temporarily closed. We now have a good picture, an accurate representation. Who all wants to go to Juliana, and they are in a uniform spot off from all the rest of the active traffic that will transition and will get rid of in a specified amount of time, right? Everybody else is kind of like juggling, right? We're able to get rid of those guys, but this is the chainsaw that we can't throw into the mix yet. We have to put that chainsaw down and juggle everybody else, and we'll see to the chainsaw with the bowling pins and balls and all that fun stuff. So you fine juggler, let us go to the next slide and talk some more technique, okay? I will see you there. Well, perfect. Finally, something that is not done in Microsoft Paint, am I right? Here we are kind of in that same geographical area that we are trying to give you a visualization of via Microsoft Paint, but this is an actual screenshot of the radar plan view display, the PVD, whatever you want to call it, the scope. And sure enough, let's go over some of the things that we covered in Chapter 4. A little refresher here. Clearance to holding fix. Consider operational factors such as length of delay, holding airspace limitations, navigation noise, altitude, meteorological conditions, when necessary to clear an aircraft to a fix other than the destination airport. Perfect. The fix we have in mind today that kind of factors in to all these caveats in this paragraph is Leone. Leone is a relatively new waypoint. As you see there, it is inside the Jazz. Geographically, it is close to all of the entry gates into Princess Juliana Approach Control, namely Slugo. It is kind of offset from most of the airways, so it's in an optimal position. As you see, Colau is also shown too, but let's focus on Leone today because that's the one we're going to use most often. Colau, we could use it, but we're just not going to use it today. Actually, because you're probably thinking to yourself, Steve, American 2312 is probably a perfect candidate for Colau because they're on Yankee 355. And if this wasn't a presentation and we were sitting down working the sector together, well, hot dog, I would certainly agree with you. Also, too, to prolong that paragraph, when the assigned procedure route being flown includes a charted pattern, this is sounding good, you may omit all holding instructions except the charted holding direction and the statement as published. Always issue complete holding instructions when the pilot requests them. Wonderful. The holding pattern at Leone is charted, so you do not have to provide detailed holding instructions. Now, if you remember in our first video, when we went to the Sector 6 environment, when we were dealing with Yankee 290 and we cleared aircraft to Idaho, we had to give, well, there's charted pattern, there's a charted holding pattern at Idaho, so I think we used a different fix. Maybe it was Roble, I believe, and we had to actually give detailed holding instructions. But now we don't have to. Our job is a lot easier. So let's consider some other things as well. Now, watch out for airways, random routes in the proximity of Leone. As you see, there is a lot of dashed blue lines there around Leone. Now, nothing quite touching the airspace around Leone, but when we're dealing with aircraft that are holding at high altitudes and our holding pattern will be large in terms of the inbound and outbound legs and the turns and stuff like that, we have to watch out for, well, first, random routes. Think of your Alopo Direct Kikas, your Alopo Direct Hinches, Alopo Direct Opals. Think of your aircraft that are transitioning from Zapata, maybe Gabar, possibly Modix Hillary Direct Kinch. You see how these random routes can possibly get tangled up with your charted holding pattern here at Leone, not to mention the airways, Lima 329, you got Lima 461, Lima 327, and if you wanted to go over more of them, you have also Mike 525 there as well. So something to consider and to be careful when you are dealing with aircraft at level flight that might be below your holders, that's always a problem, or aircraft possibly departing VC bird St. Kitts that are still in a climbing phase and they are going to transition through the Jazz, transition through your holding pattern airspace, maybe not transition through it itself, but come close. You might want to just give it a second look and just be careful and coordinate with R2 accordingly. Just let them know, talk to each other, assign headings, vector around it. You're going to have a beehive of activity in a small geographical area. Now remember, holding pattern speed, 14,000 feet plus 1 and above, 265 knots indicated, inbound leg of 1.5 minutes. So just keep that in mind. That is what the air crews are going to adjust the aircraft to, and know that that is the operating characteristics that you will be dealing with. Oh, there we go. There's Mike 525 for you. Now, how do you see the charted holding pattern? Well, we'll bring up the handy dandy micro eArts keyboard and you hit the right Alt key. Do not hit the left Alt key. This one is specific to that location. The right Alt key and hold down H. And it's a toggle. You just keep hitting it as you need it and all of them will appear. All of the charting holding pattern airspaces and a nice little racetrack design will appear and you will know that that is what is published and that is what the air crews will see as well on their charts. So as you see here, we have a nice little illustration here via the video map of everything to consider when we are holding aircraft. Now, Leone luckily is off the beaten path. It is not associated with any airways. It is not associated with any SID or STAR or any other procedure. It is a standalone holding fix, which is published, which is awesome. But just keep in mind there could be a likelihood, propensity for aircraft to be getting pretty close to that holding pattern area. So just remember the JAS, you have aircraft transitioning on random routes from New York Center, also to the airways that we just talked about. And like I said, what you are looking for is aircraft climbing and requesting altitude that are higher than your holders. And also to remember that aircraft are going to be transitioning possibly southwest bound, who might be at even altitudes that might also get in the way of your holding aircraft, whether you're descending, or more than likely you're going to be descending your holding aircraft eventually. So just watch out for all of that. Okay, so good job with that. Some rules, some parameters that we can play by, understand, and think of as a constant. Okay, and also a little micro EARTS click and point for you. So let us move on to the next slide. I will see you there. As you see, we have returned to the confines of Sector 4 and the Microsoft Paint version of Sector 4. Not quite the wonderful video map, but that's okay. We're working with what we have made available to us, what is malleable, and we can work it to our favor. We have not informed any of the aircraft yet that holding is going to be required. As you see, we are still kind of frozen in time here, holding steady at 19er, 59er, and 1/2. Now, as a technique, by no means a requirement for you fine D4 people, I would suggest to write the alternate landing airport for the aircraft and be ready to write down the holding instructions. Pre-plan the alternate landing airport, which is in field 12 of FDIO. You can find that by requesting it or just full routing it with an I, and you'll get the ALA, the alternate landing airport. Just in case if this weather seems to sit over Princess Juliana or just become a non-movement kind of just saturated cell and the weather does not improve, we would like to know where we might be clearing these aircraft to. Why post it on the strip right now? Because just in case, if holding becomes prolonged and the flight plan drops out, we know that the flight plan will eventually drop out of the system. That's just a natural way the system works. The system thinks that the aircraft has landed, and we do not put hold messages with these aircraft or a delay message, and we are not extending the life of this flight plan in the NAS. Plans will drop out. All that valuable information, alternate landing airport included, will be gone, and we would have to play a game of 20 questions with a whole bunch of pilots saying, where's your alternate, and go over all that, where we can at least get some of that information on our own device. So good job. Alternate landing airport, St. Thomas, and Americans going to San Juan. Wonderful. Now, if you are D4 and you are helping out the R side as they are starting to give clearances to Leone, get ready with your pen and get ready with your symbology, the big H, direction, the turns, all kind of fun stuff that you might have to do. But luckily this is charted holding pattern, so there may not be a lot for you to write down. This should be really easy peasy lemon squeezy. How wonderful, squeeze a lemon. So wonderful. Let's go to the next slide and let's keep these good vibes going. Well, finally, we see some movement in these targets, right, and the clock a little bit too. So the aircraft have moved. Now it's time to issue those holding instructions. Since we have talked about it long enough, let's get at it. Now, if you've watched Hold the Line, or if you are pretty good so far with your holding phraseology, pause the video and start with American 2312 and chatter off your holding instructions, non-detailed holding instructions, because we're finally dealing with a published holding fix here. So American 2312 cleared to Leone waypoint, hold northwest as published. Expect further clearance 2030. Time now 2000 and 1/4. Maintain flight level 330. Those are very sound holding instructions. As you see, we strip marked accordingly. Big H, Leone, northwest, and the expect further clearance time. Great job with that if you followed along and did it. Remember to give detailed holding instructions if requested. Just in case, you might get a request from a pilot who's not too familiar with the area or not too familiar with Leone, or maybe they cannot find it, and it might require just a little bit more assistance. Don't hesitate to descend aircraft to get them below transitioning aircraft. Now, we talked before when we showed you the video map of the potential routes and the actual airways that could make Leone kind of a congested beehive of activity. The last thing you need is for your holding aircraft to get tangled up with aircraft who have nothing to do with that holding space or Princess Juliana or anything. They're just saying, hey, I'm overflying. Just keep all that stuff below. And since eventually, whether these aircraft land at Juliana or go to their alternate, these aircraft are going to land. They're going to land soon, right? They are at the end of the flight, right? They've been flying for a considerable amount of time. Whether they land at their original destination, they go to their alternate, these aircraft are going to anticipate a descent, whether it's their alternate or Juliana itself. So a descent is absolutely innocuous and completely harmless. And if it helps make them, the aircraft, more safe inside your operation, by all means do it. So let us practice with the JetBlue in the Windy City. If you'd like, you can pause it. And if you do so, I will see you at the next slide. I'm sure you're going to do a fantastic job with those clearances. See you there. All right, as you see, we have the strips now in front of us, and if you practice your holding phraseology, you see the strips already marked up, and you can tell the ones that I probably did because of the crappy handwriting, and the ones that the D side probably did because I'm just assuming that just about every other person on this planet has better handwriting than me, which, well, it is what it is at this point, right? So D4 technique, monitor, expect further clearance times, and advise if they need updated, right? We are only dealing with 3 aircraft here, but you know how large Sector 4 is, and chances are we are probably working Sector 4 and Sector 6 combined. So the radar is by no means on vacation, just cruising, watching this wonderful racetrack of activity over Leone, betting on, hey, who's going to actually touch the fix, or I bet that aircraft's going to touch that little smidge of red there. No, we don't have time for that. Chances are we have a lot of other stuff going on. So if you could be so kindly monitor that special posting area where we put these strips and take a look at the times and make sure that if an expect further clearance time, needs to be extended, that we are in a position to do so with the helpful scan of D4. Now remember, R4, the traffic and workload permit, even though it says that you do not have to under merging target procedures, monitor the holding pattern, watch for a stray aircraft, and give merging target procedures. Obviously, merging target procedures falls low in your priority because you do not have to do because the aircraft are in a holding pattern, and it's kind of understood that there might be a whole bunch of them and aircraft are separated by minimal vertical separation, but just something to keep in mind as a courtesy, yet again a technique. However, the first 2 things, monitor the holding pattern and watch for a stray aircraft, just remember 519. Now we're returning to the radar chapter again, holding pattern surveillance. Provide radar surveillance of outer fixed holding pattern airspace area or any portions thereof shown on your radar map, described on the video map, or described on the map overlay whenever aircraft are holding there. Attempt to detect any aircraft that stray outside the area. If you detect all aircraft straying outside this area, assisted to return to the assigned airspace. So wonderful. So if you see one of these little race cars that you have running around Leone and they start getting a little too close to the eastern boundary or start getting close to Lima 461, or you see they're making their way a little west, not quite that wonderful circular oval shape that you have come to expect or you think a holding pattern looks like, well, just advise and let the air crew know. That's the beauty of radar. You are able to see what they're doing, monitor it, and just make sure everybody is in the know. And like I said, merging target procedures cannot help just in case if something goes a little kooky, but I think everything should be just fine. As you see, the aircraft are established in their holds in the medium flight level range there, 25, 26, and 28 respectively. So they are below all what we can expect a lot of aircraft to want to transition at, whether going north or south. So they're kind of out of the way. So things are looking relatively nice here. The clock has moved up a couple ticks, and we are in a good position right now. We have our special posting area. We have some things to consider now, some techniques, and we are building up that toolbox. And let that be our guide into our dive into the next slide. Let's go feet first. The clock has moved up a bit. We have our aircraft holding. All is well, all is bright. Things are as good as they can be, all things considered, because we are holding after all, and it usually is a stressful affair. But we get this wonderful glimmer of hope. This wonderful news comes through the intraline. Princess Juliana's open. They want 20 miles in trail over Slugo. So we can take that to mean they want their inbounds over Slugo and they want them 20 in trail. Awesome. You can do this. You're R4. You live for sequencing. It's not even sequencing. It's just timing up everybody's exit out of the hold, maybe a little speed control. This is something that is worthy of you, or it is in your realm. You know what I mean? This is exactly what you live for. So D4 technique now. When you hear that, start to coordinate with D2 on who was coordinated first, right? In the spirit of first come, first serve, right? That's the way air traffic control works. So this is a good opportunity for you as a D4 to have an open dialogue with D2 saying, hey, who did you have over Slugo? Who is estimating their boundary fix first? What's the sequence? Let me know, because you're going to take that information from D2 and you're going to share that with R4 and make this a wonderful production lined up 20 in trail as those little dots start trekking their way towards Slugo southeastbound. But time for a learning concept. You didn't think we were going to have this unscathed. Things were going far too well in one of these presentations for us not to throw a little curveball at you. JetBlue 787 declaring minimum fuel. Well, okay, that sounds like a loaded statement, which it is, but nothing to panic about. Let's see what the 7110 has to say about this. Now, it's a long paragraph. I see it's in size 14 or 12 font, but this is important that we read the whole thing. It was very hard to kind of think of a section to cut out. The whole thing is important, and it's actually as concise as it can possibly be. It's as brief as I imagine any lawyer can possibly make something. So you would find that in Chapter 2. So we're back in general control here, 218, minimum fuel. If an aircraft declares a state of minimum fuel, inform any facility to whom control jurisdiction is transferred of the minimum fuel problem and be alert for any occurrence which might delay the aircraft en route. Perfect. Luckily, we are handing this aircraft off to Sector 2. So you as D4 can inform either the D side, D2, about the minimum fuel situation for JetBlue 787, or you can call the R side directly. Now, let's take a look at the note. This is the note that will kind of calm our fears and present to us a logical approach to minimum fuel. Usually it's italicized, it's a long note. Use of the term minimum fuel indicates recognition by a pilot that his or her fuel supply has reached a state where, upon reaching destination, he or she cannot accept any undue delay. Okay, so nothing major, they just can't be held up. But then again, they have been held up. So something to consider. Okay, let's keep it going. This is not an emergency situation. Perfect. That sums it up right there. Do not think of this as something to start immediately coordinating, getting all crazy about and letting the supervisor know. No, just take it easy. This is not an emergency yet, because as you see here, the paragraph gets a little more distressing situation, but merely an advisory that indicates an emergency situation is possible should any undue delay occur. Okay. Common sense. Oh man, wonderful. Thomas Paine, common sense. You know, that's wonderful. And you have a lot of it because you are a commoner, and it's uncommon to have common sense. So it's wonderful. Good judgment will determine the extent of assistance to be given in a minimum fuel situation. If at any time the remaining usable fuel supply suggests the need for traffic priority to ensure a safe landing, the pilot should declare an emergency and report fuel remaining in minutes. Okay. So as you see, for this to become an emergency, the pilot would have to understand that their fuel supply has reached a certain level, and if they understand that it is on such short supply, they need to declare with us so we can give them the priority and all the services that come with that. But the common sense thing is to think of it this way. Maybe not emphasize so much on the first come, first served, and think, okay, this aircraft declared minimum fuel. The last thing I want to happen in all of this holding and all the other stuff going on is to add an emergency to my laundry list of duties today or on this particular shift or session, especially if you're training, is the last thing you want. So what I would suggest you do is use the common sense and have JetBlue 787 leave the hold first. Even though it might not have been that way. The sequence might have been, I believe it was, if we plotted it out directly, I believe American 2312 had about 2 miles, maybe just a little bit of time over Slugo slight edge over JetBlue 787. And Windy City 334 is going over Trinky anyways, but they're going over Sluga now, and they were kind of behind all these aircraft for your first two. So just think of it this way. Let's use common sense. Let's not use the first come, first serve thing. And let's get JetBlue where they need to be. Because like I said, the last thing we want to deal right now is with an emergency, especially in this presentation, because we just declared minimum fuel. I'm not going to display an emergency on you. So bam, there's the flight progress trip. How wonderful is that? There's the alternate landing airport. As per box, as per chapter 2, 310, control symbology, you write fuel to denote that the aircraft has a minimum fuel situation, and now you have a strip that is in conformance, and it tells the whole picture of what is going on. You are going to coordinate with the other sector accordingly. There's only a little bit of time that they are going to be in sector 2, so chances are R2 or D2 does not have anything that's going to hinder this aircraft. They'll be happy to oblige, JetBlue being first, and make sure they get over Slugo and eventually to Princess Juliana expediency and all the wonderful services that we provide, in no time at all. So it's okay. Just thought it was a good opportunity for us to explore this concept of minimum fuel. So there it is. We covered it, and what do you know? It's wrapped up into a holding presentation, so you get a whole bunch of knowledge all wrapped up in a little bundle. So let's keep this going. We're almost done here. We almost found our way out of this situation. Let's keep it going. Wonderful job with that. So as you see, the aircraft are all still in their little racetrack pattern. You as the D4 controller did some bargaining with the D2 controller, had a wonderful conversation about what the sequence will be. We kind of talked about how we kind of threw the first come, first serve out of the way, because I think first come, first serve, American 2312 had a slight advantage over JetBlue 787, but we talked about how we don't want to have an emergency or anything even resembling a pending emergency on our hands. So common sense is going to rule the day with JetBlue 787 being first, followed by American 2312 and Windy City 334. So is your job as D4 to relay the sequence to the R4 controller. How wonderful is that? It makes sense. Now everybody knows. Excellent job with that. Now R4. Make this happen. Set Sector 2 up for success. Pretend that Sector 2 is training as well on the radar, and you really want to make them look good. Now, if you remember when we talked about during the beginning of this presentation, we know as R4 controllers, we are the ones setting the sequence for Slugo. The majority of the aircraft that are transitioning, making their way towards Slugo, are going to be in your airspace. There's few exceptions, right? The aircraft that maybe depart the San Juan terminal area or the Virgin Islands converging on Slugo, that's Sector 2's gig, and they have to blend whatever situation they have into your sequence. But for the most part, you're the one doing the vectoring, the speed control, altitude, considering compression, all those things that we talk about in chapter 5 in the radar environment, you're responsible for. So be a great wingman and set them up, right? We know the rules we have to play by. 20 miles in trail. We know JetBlue 787 is first. Everything else follows sequentially. Now, with all those factors heavy on our mind and at the forefront, we are able to do some air traffic control, some clearing. Start off with this, very simple. JetBlue 787 cleared to St. Martin Airport via direct Slugo, direct, maintain level 260. The 260 is just being a little conservative for American 2312's outbound leg. Not sure if that due south heading when JetBlue 787 yanks it to the south, if they might impede upon American 2312's protected airspace, I don't know, but don't worry, you have plenty of time to get JetBlue to a respectable crossing altitude, which will be coordinated by D2. And chances are D2 probably told the D4 controller, so D4, I'm talking to you. It's also good in that dialogue with R4 to share with them the crossing altitude. Like I said, setting R2 up for success, because chances are they are just as busy as you. This is even a possible point out situation. The frequency is good. It has relative good quality between Slugo and the Jazz, inside the Jazz. So this might be a situation for you as R4 to just keep R2 out of the picture, point out all these aircraft. You'll be able to have control over the speeds and all those things we just listed, and you'll be able to babysit to yourself because this is your baby. You've been doing such a good job. Why don't you just see it to the end? But yet again, do what you want, technique, of course, and everything as well. Now, when it comes to strip marking, just a review, I don't even know if we covered this in our first holding presentation. Just remember we have our markers there, the alternate landing airport fuel. But remember, when we make that clearance, JetBlue 787 cleared to this Juliana Airport, big V, V means cleared over the fix as per our strip marking symbologies. That's in chapter 2, 310, I believe it's all encompassed in there. And remember, we put in box 18 of the en route flight progress strip the time the aircraft left the holding fix. Of course, you would get a read back and everything would be wonderful, and you would wait until JetBlue 787 cleared a protected airspace of American 2312, started them down with their restriction, and then time up American 2312's turn, right? We know American 2312 is on the outbound leg. They'll be turning inbound again. You can play around with some speed, assign speeds, find that 20 miles. It won't be hard. These aircraft are not converging. They're not tied necessarily. These aircraft are going around the circle, and they will continue to go around in a circle until you tell them not to. So luckily you have control over this situation. It's very easy just to peel off these aircraft out of the holding pattern when you find your 20 miles realized. So very, very easy to do. And think of it that way. You're in control. Just time up the exit of the holders out of the holding pattern here at Leone, and you'll find yourself obliging that 20-mile restriction set by Juliana and having a fantastic time while doing it, and pressing the heck out of your trainer and the supervisor and just about everybody in the entire Caribbean airspace. So wonderful job with that. I hope you guys kind of took some things away from that, and I think you guys did a fantastic job with understanding some of the things that we have to think about and consider, and rules we have to consider when holding aircraft. In this specific location, as you see, we bounced around from the old video to Sector 6 to the large expanse of Sector 4. I'll see you at the next slide. Don't hold me, I'm scared, right? That's Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, which is a fantastic viral YouTube video, a whole series of them. So just recommend it. As you see, it's dark and ominous, Barbosa Park at a very late evening. Wonderful, ominous, and still kind of bright and artistic. I figured it was a perfect picture to kind of encapsulate our mood because you see the clouds there, likely low cloud cover. Maybe it's something that we were experiencing at Juliana that caused us to have to hold in the first place. Who knows? We may never know. And chances are, more often than not, when you find yourself holding, you'll never actually find the actual reason why or see the actual reason why you hold. It's just a phenomenon that you have to deal with. Now, it doesn't happen all the time. I mean, after all, we are controlling traffic in the Caribbean. But with that being said, with all the beautiful weather we have, more often than not, we are not holding because of weather, but because most of the airports that we provide services to, or aircraft that transition into airspaces that is adjacent to ours, and aircraft transitioning out, are single runway environments. So it takes nothing, it takes absolutely nothing, just a little kink in the chain, a little slip up in the wonderful pipeline of air traffic control to cause holding. Disabled aircraft on the runway, congestion, ramp congestion. We're talking about other island airports here. Not a lot of pavement to put these airplanes at when everybody and their mother wants to be at a certain airport at a certain time. And we know what it is most often during the holidays when people are escaping the winter blues and coming down here to enjoy the wonderful warm weather, the beautiful beaches, the boats, the parties, the cruises. And this is what happens. So just remember, you have to be prepared, mentally kind of entertaining the thought that we might have to hold. It might be an eventuality that we have to square up with. But now, with 2 videos available to you to kind of understand the fundamental aspects of holding and some of the detailed things, strip marking, phraseology, methods, techniques, you are now armed to take on holding in all of its glory, and you will be exhausted when you're done babysitting a holding pattern, peeling aircraft out of it, watching aircraft enter, playing with altitudes, watching your holding pattern, missing it with other aircraft, non-participating holding aircraft. You will be exhausted, but chances are You will come out of this with flying colors. I have no doubt in my mind that you will be able to do this and negotiate it with confidence and poise and all the wonderful things that we would love to see you deliver on. So, thanks again for spending some time with me talking shop. Holding is an awesome concept. Always appreciate the time we spend together. Steve here, wishing you nothing but the best. May your attitude be just like your separation, positive. I will see you at the next presentation. Bye now.